to Breaking Down Bits, a conversation about great comedy bits with the comedians who wrote and performed them.
Welcome to Breaking Down Bits. I'm Brian Gendron.
I'm Drew Jordan, and we're excited to be getting into the meat of season 2 now. We had a great couple episodes kicking off season 2. Kicked it off with Jeff Dye with that first episode, had Mr. Sam Talent on episode 2, which was a wonderful chat with, I think a pretty different perspective from Sam Talent, probably different from any other podcast we've done. So if you're looking for something and maybe an outside perspective, that's a good episode to check out.
Absolutely. Actually, a great time, Drew, to get into callbacks. So what's something specifically you took away from our interview with Sam?
You know, maybe this is a little personal to me, something I want to get better at. I love the fact that his history he did start in improv, and I think that gives him this crazy confidence to try anything on stage. The guy, he says in the interview at one point, he's like, look, I'm either going to kill or I'm going to bring this show down with me. And I love that idea that like, I'm going to commit so hard to these bits. I'm not going to pull back. I'm giving 100% of my effort. And I love that because I'm not great. I'm trying to get better at the performance side of things and adding act outs in. And he owns that, does such a good job. If you watch the clip that we broke down, he's excellent at that. And his actions are just as funny as his punchlines. It's powerful.
Couldn't agree more. I took away something similar, and it was very personal to me. Although it might not look like it, I actually am a big fan of Phish and the Grateful Dead, and he referenced them as a source of, each show, they play the same music. They've done thousands of shows, but each show is a little bit different, where they have tapers that come to the show, and they've got a fan base that just wants to listen to each song and see what might be a little different. What that's helped me with is telling the same jokes over and over again. And sometimes you have the same audience members, and, I get in my own head about they're not going to laugh at this, but they will, because they like to hear the hits, and they certainly will if you can make each joke just a little bit subtly different each time. And so it kind of helped me get out of my own head with some of those fears and thoughts about doing the same material day in and day out.
Yeah, great episode. Sam Talent. His point, like I said, his point of view is a little different. You're going to hear him say some things that you don't hear a lot of comedians say, a lot of great industry perspective from him as someone who's really, in his words, really done everything kind of the hard way to get all the connections. So yeah, hop on breakingdownbits.com. You can find those episodes up at all your typical, you're listening to this, so
Absolutely. So breakingdownbits.com is the conduit to everything Breaking Down Bits, where you can find us in the podcast world, as well as all of our YouTube videos. Another thing I want to talk about, Drew, is we had our second open mic, and we're going to continue that on Tuesdays. It's been awesome. Everybody's enjoyed it. Everybody's really had a great time, and everybody's hilarious. Everybody's been a lot of fun that's been involved with the mic. So here's what we're going to do. Next week, we're going to have another mic at noon Eastern. We'll open up the email, so you can email us at breakingdownbits@gmail.com to take part. And that email will close at noon on Tuesday. And then, of course, we have the mic Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern. So email us in if you want to participate in that. It has been a lot of fun, and it's breakingdownbits@gmail.com.
Woo. Yeah. So let's, I feel like this is an episode I've been waiting for a while. I actually had the great pleasure to run into Sean Patton and see him at the Comedy Cellar, I think last year. And I left with more abs and some internal injuries because I was laughing so hard. This guy absolutely kills. His writing is awesome. So let's get right into it and do a little introduction here with Mr. Sean Patton.
Sean Patton is a comedian based in Los Angeles and New York by way of New Orleans. In the past, you've seen him on Just for Laughs, Comedy Central's Live at Gotham, Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, and Conan. 2013 also marked the release of his Comedy Central Half Hour. More recently, he's been on At Midnight, This Is Not Happening, Showtime's Live from South by Southwest, True TV's Comedy Knockout, and This Week at the Comedy Cellar. As for acting, he's appeared on IFC's Marin, Comedy Central's Inside Amy Schumer, and True TV's Those Who Can't. In 2019, he and his co-host Caitlin Cook launched their podcast 5 Words on the All Things Comedy Network.
Woo!
Hello. You know, it's so glaringly obvious, by the way, when you watch any clips of mine that I've gotten new teeth in the past. Like it's so, let's just address that up front for your listeners. Don't spend the next fucking, the rest of this podcast just like, wait, hold on though. Hold on. Like going back between clips, like it looks like he got punched in the fucking mouth, because it does. It does look like that, especially that Melbourne footage where it's like, that was 2018. That was like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
That's when I decided, I was like, I gotta get better. I gotta get some dental fucking work done. Because I just had small teeth my whole life, and I was a grinder when I sleep. Down to where it looked like I had just, like, I wish I had a story where it was like, I saw a man being terrible to a woman, and and he beat my face in so she could run away and be safe. I wish to God I had a story like that. I saw a child being abducted, and I dove in the van instead, and I said, take me. And I ate all the candy that was meant for the children, and so he could never abduct children again. I wish that was a story, but instead, just decades of being fat and eating my own teeth. Anyway, my insecurity.
Just scary dreams at night, bedwetting and grinded down teeth.
But Brian, you just named my memoir.
It's great to have you and your amazing new teeth on Breaking Down Bits.
What's that?
So it's great to have you and your new teeth on the Breaking Down Bits podcast.
You are a fucking mensch. Which is, if you're not Jewish, that is a positive thing.
Oh, okay, great. It sounds very negative.
It does. A lot of Yiddish sounds very negative. I myself am not Jewish. Let's just get that out. But I live in New York, and I live in New York, and I am in comedy.
There you go.
You will find yourself loving some Jews in that world.
Well, you've had quite the career. Right off the top, we shared a podcast guest. We must have been talking to Sam about the same time. I'm going to pop up here 5 Words with Caitlin Cook.
Yeah.
Y'all been doing that for some time now. Tell us a little bit about the show.
That podcast is a, you're supposed to, I guess, podcasting is a lot like writing, like do what you know, I think. Because I've definitely been on some podcasts. And I almost feel bad because we talk about this on our podcast a lot, but like I've done podcasts before where you go on and it's like, all right, so we're going to do 10 minutes up top, just the two of us going to go over the news. And then we're going to do a 5-minute where our friend's going to call in as like, the crazy lumberjack. That's his character. He's chopping down social issues. So he's going to call in for 5 minutes, and then we're going to do a sports segment. Then we're going to take a break. Then we're going to have you for 10 minutes, and then a break, and then 10 more minutes. And you're hearing all this, and you're like, so you're just a radio show. You got into the podcast world to make a radio show.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. It's almost like AM radio is to podcasting what like wine coolers are to hard shelters.
It's true. It's true. You got to break the format. This is about conversation, and hopefully we're not. Actually, we got to go to the lumberjack guy real fast.
Brian? Let's cut to the chopper.
No. We're gonna go live with Rob Mungle in his That's right. I'll drop some fucking deep.
Yes, he's on my show next weekend. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Rob, we'll get to Rob in a second. But
yes.
This podcast, we just it's a game we used to do at bars when we were shit-faced. When we were like, Caitlin and I would always end up at bars, at comedy clubs, waiting on other comedians to show up. And when they'd show up, we'd be like, hey, just give us 5 random words from your journey here. Just 5, just off the top of your head. And then we try and reconstruct their journey. So we just start doing that as the podcast. The guest comes on, they give us words of a story. We guess what the story is based on those words. We're always 100% wrong. But that's the point. We're not trying to actually figure out what the story is because we know they're about to tell us. But conversation, and it's kind of like in a conversation sandwich, So, and Sam was a very interesting guest because we had to do it right before a show in Denver, outdoors, and it was fucking freezing. And it's by far our shortest episode thus far, but still one of the more interesting. Because Sam is just you guys were talking about him up front. I'd like to double down on your host's praise for Sam Talent, listeners. That guy is a fucking Jedi, and his book is unbelievable. It is so great. It is such a great piece of work. It's a masterpiece in many ways. And he himself, I've known Sam for 10 years now, and yeah, he is that guy. What's a good way? It's almost like if you were watching, if you went to an underground fight. You know what I mean? Like an underground.
That's a place you could see Sam Talent for sure.
Yeah.
A place where he's definitely doing 10 minutes up top. But if you went to an underground fucking blood sport fight, he'd be the guy who comes out and he's covered in spikes. He's got a leash around his neck and
his book cover.
Absolutely. In the sense that he's either going to murder everyone or he's going to die right after the first hit. But still, yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's so good. So tell us a little bit about how you initially kind of got the breaks, because came out of New Orleans, but you've done so much late night and Comedy Central way before you got. What were the steps that got you from local comedian to nationally known comedian? What made the jump there for you?
Well, I started in New Orleans, as you said, yeah, and which is just I'm drinking out of a coffee mug with a king cake on it. I love. I'm in New Orleans right now. I'm actually in Slidell, Louisiana, for you geography heads. But I'm at my sister's place at the moment. Started in New Orleans, and I stayed here for way too long up top. I was here for 4.5 years before I finally left, because there was a small group of comics, and there was a handful of us that were really good and really passionate, and we were we can just do it from here. We didn't know shit. Yeah. And I said Rob Mungle because early on, I felt like once a month, a crew of us would drive to Houston, which is 5 hours from New Orleans. We would drive to Houston to do open mics. Wow. Right. And there used to be this club in Houston. I want to say it was called the Laugh Stop.
Yep.
Right? And they had this open mic. It was on Monday nights. I remember that much. And just to date myself, the first time I ever went to this open mic was a Monday night. The first Monday night, maybe not the first, but first couple of years that the Houston Texans existed.
Oh wow!
So there was still this new team that the city of Houston seemed to hate at first, but
still do. They're terrible.
Because I remember so many comedians going on at this open mic and making Texan jokes. And it was always Houston Texans. So what? Their logo's a guy with a shotgun and a bush jerk and a bush. Yeah, that's right. That was back during the George W. Bush era when we thought that guy was the worst president possible.
Well, if we'd have known what we knew now.
Exactly. It's like someone being I missed my uncle that just molested me. Not this new uncle who fucking psychologically tortures me and makes me try and sell his book door to door. He's got a self-published book of novels, of novellas. He makes me sell them. Then I got to come back. Then I got to get molested. I wish. What happened to the guy that just molested me and then pretend like it didn't happen? But yeah, that's a lot.
It's like that.
Yeah, that's a lot. But yeah, we would go to that open mic. I just remember so many Texan jokes up front, but we go to that open mic and all the big Houston guys at the time would be there. like Mike McRae, who lives in Austin now, I believe. I've seen that guy around quite a bit still. Sam Damaris, I remember that guy.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He was always hilarious. But like Rob Mungle, I remember, was the guy that when like they called his name, like a path cleared.
Oh,
you know?
wow.
and like people just like back. It was almost like a bejeweled prince was going on stage. Back away and like. He went on stage and clearly like it was one of those mics where it was like it would go for hours and they'd get all the newbies out of the way and then let the fucking hot shots go up and crush it, do whatever they wanted for longer sets. And Rob was one of those guys, and he was always like, it was just crazy because he was like, when I thought of Houston back then, I thought of that guy.
Yeah,
I haven't seen in like a decade. I don't even think we've never talked. We've never exchanged words, him and I.
That's wild.
Wow.
So him and Sam are doing my show next weekend on November 7th. And I'm hitting him up right now. I'm like, he's talking about you right now. He's like, I hope it's all good. And I'm like, man, it's the highest praise. Jump online. Yeah.
I remember it being like that guy was the king. I remember
what happened to him. Not
well, dude, there was this one thing. So it was Rob Mungle, Sam Damaris, this other guy who doesn't do comedy anymore. I believe his name was Ben Mowbray. Ask him if that was his name. Ben Mowbray, I think was his name. And then one other guy who I can't remember. I'm sorry. But they came to New Orleans once as this thing called the Whiskey Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Which was for those, yeah.
Now we're getting some Mongol interaction. This Texans logo is a jock strap.
There you go.
There it is. And then fuck you guys.
Yes.
Yeah. But they would come to New Orleans as the Whiskey Brothers, which was a take on the Rat Pack. So it'd just be, but they were all comedians doing sets and they'd like interrupt each other and then do the sets some more. And it was great. But the problem was that they were all drinking real whiskey on stage. With the Rat Pack, if you look into it historically, they were drinking apple juice.
Oh, wow.
Pretending to be fucked up. So the Whiskey Brothers, by like the third person sets, were all like, fucking do a fucking bit, you piece of shit. Hilarious. For all of us young New Orleans guys to go be like, oh, we got to see these Whiskey Brothers. And like the first like half hour of the show is like, God, they're so good. And by like the end of it, we're like, I mean, is this comedy? You just get fucking hammered? Okay, we can do that too. But started New Orleans. Then Katrina happened. I had decided to leave earlier that year, and then the storm happened. Then it was just like, what is reality? What is life? What the fuck? I don't even know what to prepare. That's almost why Katrina was a microcosm of what the pandemic is now. That's why I have hope, because I've been through a smaller version of this before where it seemed hopeless and seemed like life was never going to be operating at a speed you're used to again. And I can honestly say the city of New Orleans is in a better place because it went through Katrina. Yeah. And hopefully it's going to be the same way for the US. But also fuck Trump. But the what was it? Oh yeah, but then I moved to LA for a year, and that was where I kind of got a dose of like what comedy really is, because going to LA it was like, oh shit, everyone's fucking hilarious. Like I went from New Orleans where I was in like the top percentile of comics that actually was funny, only because there was only maybe 6 of us who were actually trying to do it for real. The other 10 comics in New Orleans were a complete fucking weekend warrior. You know what I'm saying? They were like all in their 40s and 50s, all like professionals, teachers, engineers. We had 2 doctors, and who would dip in on Tuesday nights to do comedy to vent demons. Where you're like, I'm fucking funnier than Doc Raj. It's like, oh, doctor, you mean the neurosurgeon who does a ghetto character on stage? You're funny. You're comparing yourself to Joe Lee, the Edge-a-Cajun character, dude. This woman would go on stage. She'd be like, "Oh, yo, I'm from Thibodeau, Louisiana," and she'd be all Cajuned up, and she'd get on stage and she'd have a newspaper and be like, "Did y'all read about this here happening?" And then she'd mispronounce a word. And then there would be a guy in the audience who was a plant, was her husband / writing partner, who would be like, "Hey, that's not how the word's pronounced." And she'd be like, "Oh, yes, it is, darling." And she'd give the Cajun version of the word, juxtaposition. Caucasian. It's a Caucasian, which means it's half Cauc. That's not white and half Asian. And those were the bits. That wasn't one of hers. I came up with that.
It's good.
Might go in the act.
But her and her husband were fucking, I think, a principal and a vice principal in Hammond, Louisiana or something. They had like real fucking, and so that was like who we were doing comedy with in New Orleans. And then like a crew of us who were like fucking 20, we're all 22 and like fucking smoking cigarettes, being like, these fucking hacks. And it's like, yeah, because to them it's a hobby. They're just trying to like have fun. And we're all like, they don't know comedy. And then we get up and, we're so young still and be like, oh, what, you guys can't handle, you can't handle real jokes about what if your balls could actually talk to you? Like, what if your balls were female? How would they feel about having to like delegate the sperm? Really? Oh, what, you guys can't handle that shit? And then like, next up, Bobby the basketball coach. And it'd be like a guy going up, be like, hey guys, and it was all basketball jokes. And that guy's actually a basketball coach. I'm at Louisiana. Anyway, so when I moved to LA, that's when it was like, oh, now here's the top 6 guys from everywhere. Top 60 guys. And that was fucking intimidating. That was like when the idea of like, that's when I like was like, oh, you have to go to an open mic every night. And then I started doing that. And then like, that's where I met like Kyle Kinane and shit. That's all I remember. No, I'm kidding. That's the only guy who was nice to me. That's the thing. I met a lot of comics back then, but Kyle was the only guy who was like, hey man, like a nice enough guy. This was pre-beard cigarette smoking Kyle Kinane, which if you know Kyle now, it's almost like he invented the beard. And he doesn't smoke cigarettes. But back when I met him, he was shaven face, fucking cabbie hat. Kind of that like Kyle kind of like always looks stoned, even though he doesn't really ever. He's just ripping down cigarettes. Like, hey man, funny bit. And I was like, oh, thank you. Can you give me a ride? Or no, you're not, Tabby. You're not okay. Do you have some information? Is this a film noir situation? But doing that in LA for a year was, I don't know. That was sort of like not a wake up call, but just sort of like I'd been doing it for 4.5 years in New Orleans. I had gotten comfortable as a comedian, being on stage, etc. It was LA that made me really be like, fuck, okay, you got like, this is a daily, everyday thing. So then like I did that in LA for a year. And then I liked it. I was enjoying it. I didn't love LA as a city, but I loved being doing comedy every night. And like the comedy scene was great. And then, and it was crazy back then because now the comedy store is like this heralded thing in LA, and it's great. It's a great place. But back when I was there, the store was like dead. It seemed like no one was doing this. It was all about UCB and all about the bar shows. And, so I was doing all those where like, and I know like the store is definitely competitive as hell. And there's a lot of great comedians there. But I almost feel like I wish I had something like that back in LA, just because it gave you some sort of map. Whereas back when I was there, it was just sort of like, you got to be good enough to get on one of these shows. Then once you get on one of these shows, you got to kind of stay on these. We don't really know. Just be good. Just be funny. Where like, I know that's also the rules of comedy at the Comedy Store too, but there wasn't just this one central place back then. It was just sort of scattered in all parts of the city. But after being there for a year, this last minute opportunity opened up for me to move to New York for extremely cheap. That was it. It was just extremely cheap. My friend was like, hey, do you want to move to, I'm leaving my apartment in New York and the rent is $420 a month flat.
Wow. Does that come with stabbing or no stabbing?
No actual room. It wasn't it was a cubicle built in a fucking apartment.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Let me pause real quick, Sean, to reflect on a few things you said, because for like a newer comic, that scenario you explained where none of the comics are nice to me is quite a reality, and I think it's really refreshing for you to say that, you know, there's only one that was nice to me, and you know, looking back, it was Kyle Kinane, and so that I think that's helpful for comics. The other thing that you kind of mentioned is that you wish that there was sort of a home base for you, like the Comedy Store was now. And actually, I think was it Jeff Dye, Drew, who said something similar, that it sounds like you all came up around the same time, same kind of. It wasn't what it is today. But I think establishing that home base can be really helpful, and kind of having your home club established seems like it would be important.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say to younger comics too, it's not that people are being dicks to you. It's that everyone is insecure. Even the funniest guy on the mic, even the funniest girl on the mic, even the funniest person in the comedy scene that you're in now, they are still insecure. And it's not that everyone hates you, unless you're a piece of shit. Unless you're just
everyone hates you.
Fucking trying to finger blast your way to the top, or
is that a valid strategy?
I feel like there are some people who think it is. I feel like there are some people like, I'm not gonna fuck my way to the top because I have a tiny penis that I'm ashamed of, which turns me into this human. So I'm just gonna finger blast my way over. But no, like there's also a lot of nervousness going on in comedy. Like it's even at like a bigger tier. Like you still are like, oh man, that famous comedian hates me, doesn't want to be anywhere around us. I don't know what we did to them, but let's just walk away. And then then they go on stage, and then afterwards they're very nice to everyone. Like, oh, it's because you're in your head, even famous, even you, famous comedian, who's everyone's already here to see, and that's amazing, and you make money, and I've been a fan of you forever. You're still like, before you go on, you know, and it can read to some people as, also don't try and talk to famous comedians before they go on. I've seen that so many times where it's like, oh my God, hey, Bill Burr, I'm a huge fan. And Bill's like, yeah, I'm about to go on stage, so be a huge fan from out there for a moment, if you don't mind.
Sure. So you moved to, you did the LA, finally got into New York.
Oh yeah. I moved
you were already sounds like you were already doing well. Your comedy act was already pretty strong, because you were, you know, you had years of doing well. What was that first thing that got you, like, I don't know, some publicity or some TV? What was that first step in?
I mean, when I got to New York, that was the thing. If LA made me realize I had to go on stage every night, New York made me realize I had to go on stage every hour. Not really, but made me realize I had to be on stage multiple times a night. Mm-hmm. That was the door that was opened up when I got to New York, where I was like, oh shit. Because you could do 1 or 2 open mics a night in LA, but it was hard. And New York, it was like, oh fuck, I could go 4 or 5 open mics a night. It's relatively doable.
Wow.
And then the same thing it's why I prefer to live in New York now over LA. I got no beef with that. LA is a wonderful place, but like wonderful-ish place. But but like New York, it's like, oh yeah, I mean, you know, pandemic lifted hopefully, but like you could get on stage 5 times a night in New York, and it's not a hassle. It's sort of just like you do your shit, and it's great. And you can do 20 to 30 spots a week, and you're like, yeah, this is life in New York City. I love that.
Now,
but
do you think could you do that as Sean Patton, the great comedian, or what about a newbie or someone who's just been getting into it? What's possible?
I'll put you like this, man. I'll put you like this, and this is the fucking God's honest truth. I will go and do shows, like bar shows and shows, in, you know, a lot. I'll do any fucking spot people offer me if I can. I love stage time, but I'll show up to these shows sometimes, and I'm like, I don't know any of you. Right, multiple times a week this will happen, where it's like, I don't know any of these comedians. Wow. And then there's comedians there that they're hanging out with. So like the New York comedy scene is so fucking big that if you have the ability and the drive, you can definitely get up multiple times. It's the quality of show will be less. Right. You know, a newbie's not going to get on stage on the same fucking 20 shows as Michael Che is. You know what I mean? But yeah, but like you can get the stage time. There's a lot. But the thing that, I mean, when I got to New York, the clubs weren't really that open to what they called alt comics back then. I don't think it was really a thing. Like Reggie Watts is an alternative comedian. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm like, what we all did, we just weren't fucking club comics. We were bar guys. But the first thing that, I mean, getting Montreal, the Comedy Fest, helped. But I don't think that festival is what it was. Like, and that's no offense to the fest itself, but like, it's just, you know, back then it was like the internet wasn't what the internet is now. Like YouTube was around, obviously, but people weren't making careers off of it. Social media, you had MySpace, you know, it wasn't like Twitter wasn't really a thing yet, you know, like Instagram didn't exist yet. So like back then you really kind of had to like just be great as great as you could and push the industry to pay attention to you. And even when it happened, it still didn't mean shit. That was the most fucking heartbreaking thing about it all, was like you'd get to these milestones. You're like, when I got Montreal, you're like, yes. And then you go and I did well on New Faces. And it was like, holy shit. And then it was just nothing for 2 years after that.
Wow.
You know? And people still would be like, yeah, but you just did Montreal. And you're like, what do you think that means? You think now I can just walk into any network and be like, give me a TV show, give me a 2-film deal, also put me on the road for 26 weeks, A-list clubs only, and yeah, I'm good. And whatever else you want to throw at me, I'm open for. Like, no, they still just kind of like hip pocket you and earmark you and just like, all right, you know, we'll get to you when we get to you. And then you get another milestone. They pay a little more attention. You know, then I got Live at Gotham in 2009, long time ago. And you think like, oh my God, I got a TV credit now. And it's like, yeah, no one gives a shit. And then I got Fallon like a few months later when it was still Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. And it was like, holy fuck. And I got to like, had an exchange with fucking, with Black Thought from The Roots, you know, while on stage, and it was fucking hilarious, and it was great. And then you're like, I just did Late Night, and then they're like, we still don't give a shit. You know, everyone's like, yeah, this is and they'll treat you like you're the next fucking, you know, George Carlin. They'll treat you that way in the industry. They'll be like, oh my God, we're literally so excited to be around you, you know, and you're like, oh my God, literally, like the way it's real defined, and then they're on their Blackberries, they're talking to their fucking assistant. And
so where do you go then if it feels like these big credits that would blow people's minds? It's in theory, what do you do then if those aren't really the big stair steps?
I mean, okay, I will say I existed at a point. I still exist.
Good. Really glad for that.
There was a chunk of the time where it was just like I was in this period where we were like, I feel like the whole scene was transitioning out of in like big industry moments and into what it is now. You know, it's all DIY now.
Gotcha.
It's all artisanal DIY comedy. That's what comedy is now. Accept it and you'll be happier. And it's but I was in that transitional period where a lot of my peers handled it way better than I did. You know, I focused way too long, way too hard on the material, which you should do. I still stand by that. You should be great. You should focus your goddamn energy on the material. It has to be good to sustain. But you should also find a way, tap into yourself and find that reservoir to focus on being your own manager now. Because that's what you are. Like the internet, man. Like be posting constantly. You know what I mean? Like put yourself on social media. Content. I used to hate that fucking word. I was like, it's art. You know what? It's content. And maybe let the content become art, you know, but like you've got to put yourself and you've got to push yourself and you've got to put it all. Like if the amount of comedians that your listeners and you know that are fucking massively successful right now that the industry never gave a shit about if you listed that off, you'd be like, wow, that's amazing. Wow, you're right. There are so many like great comedians who are so huge right now on Patreon, on YouTube, their podcasts, on Instagram, who the industry just fucking ignored for years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now it's like, yeah, you kind of don't need them, to be honest. You really don't. Like if you have the drive and the savvy online, and that's my weakness. Like my online savvy, I'm trying to get better about it. I work real fucking hard on it, but like, it's important, man. And if you can put yourself out there, you don't need to even think about it. I don't even think you need to, if you're in a good comedy scene, you could just do it from there.
That's really inspiring, I think, for everybody, and a good lesson, right? So focus on the material and a great time to transition to writing, but you've got these tools and you can bypass more or less industry. And I'm glad you were vulnerable enough to say, hey man, I kind of should have done this earlier and I'm working on it. So thank you for sharing.
A little bit.
But I can't. We won't let you off the hook with that. You've got to be funny first. So let's dive into it, man. Let's dive into writing. There's a question we ask all of our guests, and it's very open ended. How does Sean Patton write comedy?
Oh man, I actually, my brother-in-law is he owns a pound. And whenever I come up with a new bit, you have a key to the pound. So I come back into town. I'll just stockpile new bits. I come back into town and I try out my material on the dogs. And if I can make them laugh, it's a keeper. That's not true. None of that. I think the way I have in my phone. I still have notebooks, but like just in your iPhone. I just have like a doc list where whenever I come up with an idea, just write it. By the way, look at that. If you can see what it says, my screensaver.
Record all your sets.
Yeah. Nice.
Because I forget sometimes. I'm like, oh yeah. Dude, I can't fucking stress that right now. If you're a younger comic, I cannot fucking stress this enough. I wish I would have been doing this for a decade now. Record every single fucking set you do and listen to it. Just do it. I know you hate the sound of your own voice. I know it's awkward sometimes and it makes you want to cringe and you love that bit, but then you hear yourself doing it, you're like, fuck this bit. I know. And if you love the sound of your own voice, you're probably a shit comedian. You're going to hate yourself in 5 minutes. I know. It's fucking awkward. You're like, oh God, that's me. But do it, because eventually you won't hate the sound of your own voice and you'll start to pick up little like, oh, wait a second. Maybe I should come out of the gate a little fucking colder and then heat up instead of just blasting the audience with a fucking premise so loud and so fierce that they didn't understand what I said. So that when I get to the punchline, they're just confused. It's not that they're not laughing at me because they don't think I'm good. It's that they didn't hear what the fuck I said because I came out. Oh, it will help immensely. It will change your fucking life. Anyway, so I record an idea. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, so it's very hard for me to focus my thoughts on one thing for very long. So like I know some comedians who never actually sit down and write bits out. And I'm very envious of that. I have to sit down sometimes on my computer. A lot of times I like writing. The lost art of handwriting. I have it. I love doing it. I love it. I fucking have beautiful handwriting. I swear to God. I will write a bit out on paper, word for word. Like as I'm thinking, I'll fucking just dump it on paper and then read back over it and just sort of like find the moments that work. They're like, okay, this is all it. And that's what I remember when I bring it on stage for the first time. And every bit you ever see me do on stage, I'd say is probably mostly written on paper and then refined on stage. And on the instance, I kind of have a rule and it's fucking, I don't know, it works for me. If I ever write something on stage, and that happens, you get on stage, you say a fucking line, it's hilarious, you remember it, you say it again, it works even better. Now you've added another couple words to it or hold on a line like, oh my God, that's a bit. Those bits, if I write them on stage, I never write them down on paper. Part of my OCD. We can. That's a whole different podcast.
Speaking of you going on stage, what do you do? We always ask comedians what's your process as you prepare for a set and when you actually take those last moments before you step on stage.
I mean, truthfully, man, it's hard to do this, but I like to be alone, 100% alone, for the half hour before I go on and the half hour as soon as I get off.
Oh, wow.
Regardless of how I did. If I bomb or I kill, it doesn't matter. Like I get pretty vulnerable on stage. I get pretty open. So like I need to kind of like prepare myself before I go on, and then like seal myself back up when I get on.
So what happens on that? What does that preparation feel like or look like when you're trying to prepare to step on stage?
The preparation, I swear to God, looks like I just ripped ass and I'm trying to hide from it. If you ever see me at a show where it's like, oh, he just farted and he's trying to escape from it, but make it look like he's not escaping from it, I'm actually in my head like cementing what I'm about to do on stage. Yeah. And afterwards, you wouldn't know what it looks like because I'm trying to completely avoid you. Like, I don't. Good God! Sometimes, I know some comedians are fantastic about getting off stage and immediately diving into the audience, just going out there and greeting everyone and high-fiving and hugging and taking pics. I'm fucking horrible about that. I'm actually pretty shy. I don't want to talk to anyone for at least a half an hour because, you know, it's like I need to like, what's it called? I need to carterize.
Yeah, it makes sense.
The giant gash I just did in my chest, which not really. I don't actually cut myself on stage.
Good to know.
There's a guy out of Jersey who does that though. He's pretty funny. It's good.
Are you a set list guy? What do you when it comes to set list, is it just whatever happens, or do you have like a set thing in your head with the OCD? I figure you might have some pretty specific things that you like to work.
No, I make a set list. I'll show you if you don't mind. In my phone. Again, if you can, I'll show you. I don't know how well you can see this, but
sure, yeah. It's
like, let me get to. It's been a minute before it's, but you can see here, like it's just like each date. There's dates. Sure. There's set. So like I'll make a set list in my phone, but I will never stick to it. It's inevitable. Like it's what I'm putting down is like, hey, these are it's like a party. You know, it's like, hey, we've got the punch and we've got the keg and there's a cake and there's crawfish and there's some chips, but they're all going to mix. You know what I mean? Like next thing you know, like people have put fucking the punch is now spiked. The cake is on. I don't even know where it fucking went. The chips have now, somebody's brought guacamole. Where did guacamole come from? And the keg's floated. But there's a new keg. It's a completely different keg.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know whatever I set up is going to get fucking screwed around, but that's kind of, it's, to me, a set list is less of a script and more of just like an inventory of tools that you want to use for that specific set.
Awesome.
And I also like, you know, I find it's very important, for me personally, even with my like A game shit, even with my like, I know this kills, I'm still always tinkering with it when I find the time to. Just because it can always be better. Until you record it and release it, it can always be better. Even if it's perfect, it's never perfect. And if it's perfect, if you think you've got a perfect bit, that's probably a piece of shit bit. It's probably perfect because you don't want to admit that it could be better. Like everything can be just one word more, one word less, one extra fucking line, one less line, one acceleration of pronunciation, one change of the way you say a word. It's like everything can always be stream. It's like a haircut, and then sometimes the hair grows and you got to trim it a little bit, or you want to let it grow out a little bit more and you got to style it. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's always be tinkering with your material. It's worth it.
That's a great analogy with the haircut. Thousands of hairs here, and getting them all to work into one cohesive thing is.
Well, also the bit we're going to play. Like, I want to say that, like the idea for this bit, I came up with maybe 11 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I did it a couple of times on stage, maybe like a handful of stages, maybe a little bit more. But I did it back then, and it just never felt good. It just wasn't working the way I wanted it to. So I just sort of like shelved it and forgot about it. And then this Comedy Central, you know, this Comedy Central Comedy Cellar show, it was legit. Like, they'd give you some topics a couple days before and be like, if you can hit some of these topics, go for it. If not, don't worry about it. It was a suggestion. It was just like, this is what's going on in the world right now. If you have any material that relates to this, or you want to try out, that's what's so great about that show. The amount of new shit that you were seeing on TV.
Wow.
The amount of bits that people were doing for like the first time. that like just worked in the moment because it was topical enough that ended up on TV. It was great. But it was something about that week or something, a dog had been elected mayor, and it just kind of like bit from my face. Oh my God, the fucking bit that I could never quite fucking make work. And then I just sat down and I was at a bar. I was at a bar between sets. I had done a set at the Stand, and I was heading to the Cellar to film this. And I was like, fuck, I still don't know. Like, my senses sort of, and I was just at this bar, like, holy shit. And I had my notebook, and I was like, I remember I had an Irish coffee. I had fucking the bartender. He's like, we can't serve Irish coffee, but I give you a shot and I give you a coffee. I'm like, great. And I was fucking sitting there, just like shot of whiskey, sipping coffee, and it was this. This is why I say never kill your babies. I've heard this so many times. Older comedians giving younger comedians advice. If it doesn't work, you gotta let it go. Bullshit. If you think it's funny, I don't care if it bombs for fucking 5 years straight. If you think it's funny, if you believe in your fucking comedy art that this idea you came up with is funny, save it. Never kill it. Put it somewhere. Always have it ready to go because you never fucking know. A dog might get elected mayor in Vermont. You know what? Think about that. That could have been a thing a comedian could have told me, like, kid, this is only ever going to be funny if a dog gets elected into a municipal position of authority. So you might as well fucking move on. You know? So, all right, you're right. You're right, rumbling Joe Dixon or whatever your fucking comedian. Whatever is fucking, that's a lost thing of comedians putting like I'm rumbling Steve Irwin or I'm goofy Gary Crane or whatever. But fucking just never kill your babies, because that bit, it took a while. And I know I got shit from so many other comedians being like, did you do an Air Bud joke? I'm like, yeah. You know what? It fucking works in the context. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Drew, there's no better way to set it up than that. So I'm going to go ahead and play this bit from the Comedy Central's, I think it's live at the Comedy Cellar. There we go.
In Fairhaven, Vermont, a dog was elected mayor. A dog was elected mayor. That makes you think that maybe those Air Bud films were based in true events. You know, you got to think about it. There's 5 of them. If you're not familiar with the Air Bud films, 5 films about a dog that plays sports. And up until now, I was like, that's ridiculous. But I don't know. Clearly, dogs can do a lot. I mean, think about it. The first Air Bud film, self-titled, just Air Bud. He plays basketball in that one, right? And it's not like he's LeBron, you know what I mean? Like, he can't dribble at all. He's useless on defense. He's just a perimeter shooter. He just hangs out by the three-point line. They bounce him the ball. He hits it with his nose. It goes in like half the time. It's not, you know what I mean? They're not trying to say he's a star, but that film's about heart, you know? Then Air Bud 3. That one's titled Air Bud World Pup. Exactly. He's playing soccer now, which makes total sense if you think about it. What's the one rule of soccer? You can't use your hands. Dogs don't have hands or arms. They got 4 legs and a tail. They're soccer machines. You know, you put a dog in Premier League or La Liga right now, they could start, I bet. Then you skip ahead, Air Bud 4, Air Bud 7th inning fetch. Now we're talking baseball. At first you're like, well, come on, but no, he's not pitching. He's running the bases. Dogs are good at running bases. Also, batting, not that difficult for a dog, turns out. The musculature of the dog neck is quite impressive. He just stands at the plate with the bat in his mouth, right? Pitcher throws a fucking curveball. Air Bud just, bam, triples, you know? Just line drives all day. Timing and everything. He's got it down. Air Bud 5. Air Bud Spikes Back. It's a volleyball movie, and at that point, you know, he'd probably aged out of any competitive sport, if we're being honest. I mean, I'm sorry, it's just, Air Bud 5 is basically just the original Air Bud, but he's in a bikini. It was a cash grab, we can admit that. Now, you notice I skipped over Air Bud 2, Golden Receiver. Now, this is the one I have a problem with, because now Air Bud's playing football. Okay, you telling me you got a dog that's going to line up at wideout, stand completely still behind the line of scrimmage before the ball is snapped. That's to not draw a false start penalty, right? And then the quarterback's going to call an audible. And the dog is going to understand the new play. There are football players who play football half their lives who don't know all the plays. They got to wear a cheat sheet on their wrist. But the dog is going to understand the new play and know to go into motion, run to the other side of the formation, line up in the slot. And then once the ball is snapped, he's going to know. Run a 10-yard button hook, catch the giant football in his tiny-ass dog mouth. And then have the wherewithal to get the first down, then get out of bounds to stop the clock before the 2-minute warning. That is bullshit. That is bullshit. There's no way a dog, no way. At least that's what I thought. Till the dog was elected mayor. His story will be told as well. Air Bud 6, St. Bernie. It was in Vermont. Come on. No? All right. Air Bud 6, Sheba incumbent. No? Okay. All right. No, you're right. Air Bud 6, mayoral. Sit. Right? Imagine it. It opens. It's at the end of his first term. He's holding a rally because he's running for re-election, and all his supporters are shouting, 28 more years! 28 more years! 28 more years! 28 more years! Dog years! You motherfuckers! Oh, okay, you're... All right? Maybe I fucking suck at my job. Maybe Air Bud should come do stand-up. I don't think we're that far away from that. Would probably crush it. Would be so much more successful than me. They'd make a movie about him as well. Air Bud 7, Great Dane Cook. It's about an up-and-coming comedian who wins a big stand-up competition, defeating his arch nemesis, Cat Williams. There it is.
Wow.
Oh, man.
So getting the context of that, it makes this even way more funnier, knowing that you didn't probably have a lot of that back half written until sounds like that night.
Yeah, I mean, the first, like, having a dog elected mayor really, like, immediately, because before, years ago, when I was trying to get him to be on board with that bit, it was just a fucking guy rambling about Air Bud films, you know? Yeah. It was just like, okay, man, fine, yeah, we did it, crazy. But because it had happened in reality, it was like, okay, they all suspended their disbelief and like, we'll go along for this journey. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know, like, I'm not saying this is the best advice. In fact, this is not the things I'm going to say from here on out for the rest of this podcast. I'm not saying this is the best advice to young comedians. What I am saying is this is what I love to do for myself as a comedian. I leave little potholes for myself all the goddamn time. I leave little opportunities to trip and fall all over the place. And I don't mean literally. I don't mean I fucking, I don't mean I like, all right, put some Crisco over here on this side of the page. No. I metaphorically leave little potholes and little trip ups just because, like, I think that is fun as fuck as a comedian, these little moments where you back yourself into a corner and have to fight your way out of it. And I also, as an audience member, love watching comedians do that.
Yeah.
Like Bill Burr is arguably my favorite, like, living comedian right now. And I don't think he does it on purpose. I don't think he tries to back himself in the corners, but he's just got such a fucking crystallized opinion. Like, this is how he thinks, and he will say what he says on stage. And there's so often when you watch him live, especially, where the audience is just completely fucking overwhelmed by what he just said, and watching him convince them in his Bill Burr way, like, no, you heard exactly what I said, and funny, and here's why, is it's so awesome. It's so fucking great to watch, and it makes it funnier. So I don't know. I like tripping myself up a little bit and I like leaving opportunities to fall flat, because sometimes the fun is how you fall. That's the biggest thing about comedy. Comedy's not supposed to be cool. That's something that will piss me off forever, when comedians get on stage and are more concerned with looking cool and slick than being funny. Like, it's like they're trying to, they'd rather be on stage and look like they're in control and look like they know 1,000% what's going on and look like they just confidently fucking burped up these fucking bits right before they got on stage after eating some pussy back there. Like, this shit just comes to me. And that's just not fucking how it is for anyone. And I know you can rattle off a list of comedians who pull it off, who make it look like that's what it is, but it's not. They work as hard as anyone else, and they do it and they nail it. But point being, I think there's something to still be said about being like, hey, we're all fucking comedians up here. Like, we're all making you laugh. And sometimes the best way to fucking remind you about laughter is to fuck up myself, to remind you, like, hey, this isn't this honed, it's honed, but this isn't this, it's comedy. I'm here to make you laugh, and sometimes I've got to shake the whole goddamn situation to remind everyone what it is. And then we can move on enjoying, the written stuff. But leaving little opportunities to fucking fall, to just, whoa, right? We're good, right? Everyone saw that? I know. Okay. Fuck you. What? You never fall? You never fucking fall down? Fuck you. And then you go off on another tangent, which is what the end of that bit is. It doesn't work unless I get angry.
Yeah, it's like it makes it a true conversation between. It feels like a true conversation between you and the audience, because when their laughter is a little smaller, you're like, oh no, okay, fine, and you reset, and it's like, it's perfect. And there's so many small things in this bit. I would say even just the way that you say Air Bud, typically it's Air Bud, and every time you say it, it's like Air Bud. It's just like those little things just catch. I think are funny. And the batting act out is the best. That little neck twitch is so funny. Just a small little act out just makes that whole thing. The crowd just erupts when you turn your head. It's this such a small act out with such a big impact.
Yeah, man. I mean, I often, and I say this, I've said this before, but I mean it. I think that the key to me, comedy is about being funny. And there is a very, very big difference between being funny and killing. And I feel like this is something that a lot of comedians, you conflate the two, and that's great. If done right, they do intertwine into one beautiful thing. But for the most part, I think a lot of comedians go on stage with the goal of killing. But the thing about killing is that that's not the hard part. There's a path to killing. There's a sort of you can kill by numbers. There's a sort of you can go on stage and talk, you can crowd work, or, watch the comedian before you get the temperature of the room and see what it is and kind of placate to the audience a little bit. You can kill. Being funny is hard. Being funny where you go on stage with your original ideas and your original presence and be truly in the moment and have a conversation where you're really just 100% being the comedian you, that shit is fucking difficult. And sometimes it doesn't always kill, but it will kill eventually. It doesn't, or it doesn't kill in the moment is what I'm saying. Sometimes the audience isn't ha! It might just be ha, ha. But here's the thing, you're going to be the comic they remember when the show's over.
Yeah.
Right? And if you are 100% you and it works in the fucking moment, then it kills and it's beautiful. And those are the moments you should always strive for. But I equate it to a night of drinking. Okay. Killing is getting shit faced and being funny is having a good time. So it's easy to get shit faced. Just go to the fucking bar and just keep going. Fireballs, keep them coming. And then you're fucking waxed. And you're vomiting and you're 100% shit faced, you piss your pants, but then you wake up the next morning, you don't really remember it. It's not worth it. But if you go out Have a night where you have a couple drinks. You have a great conversation with the bartender. You make some new friends. You guys get into it because it turns out you grew up in the same town and never met. You get a phone number. You end up making out with someone in the bathroom. You do a little cocaine. You go back in the bathroom, end up having sex with that person. Yeah, you have an idea for a business idea, and you write it down, and then you have a great conversation with the fucking cabbie, and you're like, hey, let's go to fucking Waffle House, and you buy them food, and then you got a new friend, and in the process, you've gotten shit-faced. That's the magic.
Yeah.
And I think
you're pretty much just describing my Thursday night, so I appreciate you.
I feel like that's how you should think about it with comedy. Like you should go into it like, I'm going to be funny. I'm going to say I'm going to be 100% who I am. And if it kills, that's what it's worth it. But I think the other way around, you just end up being forgotten and kind of just going up there on autopilot and just being like, I must kill, where it's like, no, I must be funny. And if it kills, now we're talking.
So great segue. Speaking of not being forgotten, we've got our last segment, Sean, and it's called Last Laugh. Drew, I have a new graphic. This might hit a little too real. But let me play it. Is that too real? So Last Laugh works like this, Sean. You
just got sad.
I know it is.
I mean, it is Halloween is weird this year. It's like weird it's a weird time to festoon one's yard with gravestones.
It is. But the way it works is, man, you've got to put it on your tombstone. You've got your last joke that you're going to be remembered by. What would it be for Sean Patton?
Wait, for me, it would be, I would just want to put a punchline, and the punchline would be, fuck you, clown. You guys know the clown joke?
Yeah. Well, I know. That's not Adam Sandler, is it?
No, I don't know who it is, but it's just a joke. It's one of those jokes where there is no joke. The purpose is just to keep someone listening for as long as you possibly can. And then when you finally hit them with the punchline is just, fuck you, clown. And like 80% of the time, that was like my first joke I ever told. The first time I heard the clown joke, a friend of mine told me in like the 9th grade, and I thought it was hilarious that he kept us all listening for like 5 to 10 minutes. So that was like my thing as a kid. I would be like, you know the clown joke, right? And it's one of those, I'm not going to do it now. I'm not going to do it now. The whole idea of the joke is just to keep the person listening with this bullshit story about a kid who was traumatized by a clown. You stretch it out for as long as you possibly can. The longest I've ever kept someone listening was 21 minutes.
Oh my God.
I remember looking at the clock behind them, being like, okay, and I was just stretching it out. And that's the thing. You get into like the fucking story and the setups, and you get really into that, and they're laughing and enjoying that. And then when you hit them with the punchline, which is "fuck you, clown," 80% of the time, people are just like, "Oh, what? Seriously?" They're just angry, or they just do the look of like they're just angry because you just wasted their time. But the 20% that got it would die laughing. Like, okay, which I think is a lot like most of my bits, if I'm being honest. So on my grave, fuck you, clown.
Love it. ...
fuck you, clown.
Love it.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap. Sean, we'd love to give our listeners an opportunity to find you. Anything you got going on, any way they can get to you, any shows coming up, anything you want to plug?
Yeah. Let's see. I'm at Mr. Sean Patton, which looks like Mrs. Ian Patton. I know. Here it is. Yeah. Follow me on Instagram. That's the only of the social medias I give a shit about. I can't do TikTok. It makes me want to fight children. And that's the saddest part, because I'm like, I could fuck most of these fucking children up. I could beat the shit out of every one of these. And it's like, I don't want to think that way. I hate that. So I no TikTok. Twitter makes me want to beat the shit out of adults. And I'm like, I probably couldn't beat the shit out of most of these adults and I'd get hurt. But Twitter is just a minefield of insecurity now. I can't even deal with it. So, but Instagram, I do a lot of content on Instagram. My website is SeanPatton.com. I've got tour dates. I've got stuff coming up in December. I'm going to be in Atlanta, Chicago, Minneapolis, early next year, in Wisconsin. And I mean, as all these shows are socially distanced, All of them are, safe. And if you're watching right now live, I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana tonight at the Worst Beer Garden at 8 p.m. And Monday, the eve of the election in New Orleans at the Broad City Theater. Both shows, again, outdoor distance. Monday the 2nd in New Orleans. But just fucking support live comedy. We need it. If you're in Houston, support the fucking my boys at the Secret Group.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be back next week, I think, is when we're coming back with the kitchen, by the way. So if you performed in the box last time you were here, that's now food.
That's food now?
It's going to be.
All right. I'd still perform. I'd still prefer that room.
Perform for the cooks.
Yeah. I think every city in America needs a secret group, like a comic run venue. So there you go. Shout out right now to any young comic in some small town who's like, what can I do to make a better comedy scene? Open a comedy venue. Maybe not right now. Give it a year and a half.
2022, maybe.
Yeah. But also, just be funny and put yourself out there. And you never know. Like, people forget that Bo Burnham, who I fucking love, is a genius in many fucking ways. Bo Burnham, that's all he did was he just living at home in Massachusetts, just put his shit out online before there were online stars, and that can happen if you really believe in what you're doing right now. This is the biggest audience you could have.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for even saying yes to this podcast and sharing your insight on comedy and your writing and your experience and your advice. Absolutely amazing episode with you. So just thank you again for your time today.
Brian, Drew, I love you both. Thank you much. Both of those checks should clear today.
Thank you so much, Sean, for joining us. And next week we'll be back with Tom Takar. Hopefully you'll join us. And if you're interested in the open mic, please sign up, breakingdownbits@gmail.com. Y'all been great.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank
you.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Down Bits. You can keep in touch or get more when you follow @BreakingDownBits on social media, visit the website breakingdownbits.com, or shoot us an email at breakingdownbits@gmail.com.